The story opens up with our main character, Alfonso Quixote, introducing himself as the great-great-great-grandson of the legendary knight Don Quixote. The old knight was known for his bravery as well as chivalry, but he was also mocked for seeing things that didn't exist. Alfonso, on the other hand, thinks that being able to see things that others can't is a gift. In fact, he too possesses that gift, and plans to use it to save his beloved hometown of La Mancha. Once upon a time, the people of this quaint little town used to live in harmony with nature. Things started changing when powerful storms began to sweep over La Mancha regularly, causing unprecedented loss of property. The situation has gotten so worse that most of the folks have now left the town or are in the process of leaving it. But Alfonso promises that he would never leave this place as he is a Quixote, someone whose entire generation has lived and died here. The young boy concludes his introduction by quoting a famous line from his great-great-great-grandfather. To achieve the impossible, all you need is courage, ingenuity, and a spark of imagination. When Alfonso said he has the gift of seeing things that other people cannot, he meant it quite literally. The kid regularly sees vivid images in seemingly mundane things. He has been a lonely person throughout his childhood and barely has any friends in town. This, combined with the fact that seeing imaginary things runs in his genetics, has led to some peculiar characteristics with Alfonso. For starters, he has 3 bunnies as friends that no one other than himself can see. There are giant, abandoned windmills on the outer edge of La Mancha. Alfonso sees these structures as giant trolls that are friendly towards him. He also sees the storm clouds that threaten this town from time to time, as one big monster. One afternoon, as Alfonso is playing around the windmills with his 3 imaginary bunny friends, he notices something concerning. He sees thundering dark clouds headed towards his town once more. He quickly bolts up and starts to properly tie the rotary blades of the windmills so that they don't get blown away in the storm. However, as he is doing so, the blades come off the body of the mill and begin rolling towards the houses in La Mancha. Alfonso rides around happily in his bike as the giant blades wreak havoc in various homes. By the time he reaches the town's center, the blades have dragged various things from different homes like TVs and books along with them. On the other hand, Alfonso also meets Pancho Panza in the town center. The 2 boys are of the same age, but there doesn't seem to be any love lost between them. That is because the Panza family and Quixote family have never seen eye to eye for several generations now. In fact, the 2 kids appear to be ready to duel each other when they come face to face. Thankfully, this tense moment is broken up by Victoria, a local girl who is of the same age as the 2 boys. Victoria has a lazy eye, which is why she wears a patch on her right eye. She is a bold, outgoing girl who lives in La Mancha with her uncle and aunt as her parents have already passed away. She is also Alfonso's secret crush, which is why he immediately runs away to his home upon seeing her. Shortly afterwards, Alfonso reaches home where his father, Mr. Quixote, greets him warmly. His mother, Mrs. Quixote, on the other hand, knows that her son has been up to some mischief. She asks what he was doing all afternoon, and the boy replies that he was simply training his pet chicken. Just then, the windmill's blades roll past the street, along with several other household items, exposing Alfonso's lies. Mama grounds him for the rest of the week and expresses concern that her son is becoming mischievous due to the lack of friends. Mr. Quixote, on the other hand, seems to understand that his son has a different way of looking at the world. Right across the street, Alfonso's arch-enemy and neighbor, Pancho, also slowly makes his way to his house. He sees a mother trying to convince her young child about moving away from La Mancha to this new neighborhood named Carrascoland. He is so engrossed in the scene that he accidentally bumps into 2 suited men. Pancho seems to know them from somewhere and immediately rushes back home. As soon as he gets inside, he closes all the curtains and begins calling out for his parents. The 2 suited men standing outside actually work for a powerful builder named Carrasco. This is the same man who has built a new neighborhood just outside the valley of La Mancha. He is going from door to door, trying to convince people to sell their homes and move to his neighborhood, the Carrascoland. Pancho is aware of this, and animatedly tells his parents that he saw Carrasco's men outside. On top of that, he begins cursing the builder, calling him a fraud. This soon backfires as the kid doesn't realize that Carrasco is sitting in their living room and can hear everything. Despite this, the builder dismisses the insults as children making silly jokes. He simply goes back to having a chat with Mr. and Mrs. Panis. Young Pancho watches on in horror as the adults seem to be discussing selling this home and moving to Carrascoland. The shrewd builder even shows them a fancy presentation which promises that the new neighborhood is specifically designed to be kids-friendly. Enraged, Pancho tries to push Carrasco out of his home, claiming that they will never move away from La Mancha. However, Mr. and Mrs. Panas have come to a different conclusion. They are going to move away as early as the next morning. They argue that heading out of this town is the only sensible thing to do, much to the irritation of young Pancho. On the other hand, the Quixotes are busy returning all the things that were dragged along by the windmill blades. They are also soon visited by Carrasco, who promises to give them extra discounts and services if they sell their house and move to his neighborhood. Mr. Quixote, however, has no plans of doing so, as his family house has been passed down from generations to generations. He flat out refuses to accept any offer from the builder, no matter how enticing it is. Later that afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Quixote go out for groceries, leaving young Alfonso alone in the house. He is reading a book titled How to Defeat All Kinds of Monsters in Your Neighborhood, alone in his bathroom. It is obvious that the kid has no plans of staying grounded, as he wants to defeat the storm monster that has been ravaging his hometown. Across the street, in the Panas household, Pancho is busy packing his stuff. He has accepted his fate and is ready to move away. Suddenly, Victoria sneaks into his room along with her luggage. She reveals that her uncle and aunt are also moving away from La Mancha, which means she will be sent back to an orphanage. She obviously doesn't want that, and asks Pancho to let her stay there for a while. Just then, she hears a homemade telephone go off in Pancho's room. She quickly picks it up and hears Alfonso's voice coming from the other side. This is strange, as everyone knows that the two boys are sworn enemies. However, moments later, Alfonso arrives in Pancho's room through a secret trapdoor. It is then revealed that the two boys have been fooling everyone and are secretly great friends. They just have to pretend to be enemies because their families have historically been at each other's throats. Now that the secret is out in front of Victoria, the two boys begin to discuss the recent events. Alfonso is heartbroken that his only friend in the town is moving away. Pancho, on the other hand, doesn't want to relocate to Carrasco Land, a place where everything seems to be so mechanical and cramped. Victoria also has nowhere to go now that his uncle and aunt are moving away. Thus, the kids decide that they are going to take things into their own hands. They plan to sneak out of their homes and run away to the woods that surround La Mancha. After agreeing to meet at Alfonso's home that evening, they all go their separate ways for the time being. A few hours later, an impatient Alfonso is waiting in his living room alongside his imaginary bunnies. He soon hears a knock on the front door and happily assumes that it is his friends that have come to pick him up. His world turns upside down when he opens the door and sees that Carrasco, along with his two henchmen, is standing on the porch. They quickly abduct the boy and throw him into their car. In a stroke of good luck, Carrasco's car doesn't start, and they are delayed by a precious few minutes. Victoria then arrives just in time and quickly realizes what's going on. She tells the villains that she can fix their car if they allow her to do so. They have no choice, and the clever little girl quickly begins working on the engine. Obviously, she creates even more problems and allows enough time for Pancho to sneak Alfonso out of the back seat. In a matter of a few minutes, the three kids manage to fool the thugs and run away. Carrasco berates his men and tells them to go after the three little brats. A chase ensues, and the kids, on their bicycles, lead the villains towards the outskirts of La Mancha. They are about to be caught when they suddenly come across a dilapidated wooden bridge that joins the town to the surrounding woods. The kids bravely make it across one by one until tragedy strikes. Suddenly, the bridge gives way under Pancho's weight and the poor kid slips down a cliff. He, however, manages to grab onto a rope and save himself. Alfonso and Victoria together pull him up to safety. The villains are now left on the other side, as the bridge has now completely broken down. Carrasco reminds the kids that they may have gotten away from him, but there are several unseen dangers in the forest. Back at the Panas household, Mr. Panas is busy in his basement. It is revealed that he is an inventor who has a secret laboratory right under his home. He has even devised a brilliant windmill model which may allow the whole town to generate energy from non-extinguishable natural resources. But now, he has to move away, and his dream appears to be coming to an end. Moments later, yet another bad news arrives as Mr. Quixote visits the lab and reveals that both their sons are missing. The two men somehow manage to blame each other for this and get into a heated argument. But, thanks to their wives, they calm down and realize that things are extremely serious at the moment. They have to work together to locate their sons and rescue them as soon as possible. If they don't do so quickly, the kids might face unseen dangers in the woods. Thus, the two men immediately head off for a search and rescue mission on Mr. Panas's homemade flying ship. The scene then shifts to the forest where the kids don't actually seem to be in danger at the moment. They are enjoying their newfound freedom despite the fact that they have no idea what to do next. Pancho, who is extremely afraid of insects, wants to head back to the town. But Victoria, who has nowhere to go, and Alfonso, who doesn't want to go back, refuse the idea. Alfonso then reminds them that their main aim was to save the town from the monster, which appears in the form of the storm. In fact, he has even come up with a plan to do so. He wants to light up Pancho's giant firecracker and release it right in the heart of the storm. Alfonso hopes that will destroy the storm monster and make him a hero among the townsfolk. His friends are inspired by his vision and agree to help him in defeating the storm clouds. Sometime later, Victoria climbs to the top of a tree with the giant firecracker. Alfonso sits near the middle region to light the fire while Pancho stays on the ground as he is afraid of heights. They are ready to execute their plan, and Alfonso lights the wick which will burst the firecracker. Just then, Victoria sees a giant flying ship heading towards their direction. She relays this information to the boys, and Pancho realizes that it is his dad's ship. But before he can tell them to stop, the firecracker goes off and hits the ship. The kids watch in horror as it slowly loses altitude and ultimately crash lands a few miles deep into the forest. Fortunately, the kids manage to locate the crash site and quickly rush to the ship's wreckage. They, however, find no one there except one of Alfonso's chickens. While the others are busy deducing what happened, Alfonso puts a letter on the chicken's leg and lets it leave. He hopes that the bird will reach back to his home and bring in help. The scene then shifts to the headquarters of Carrasco Constructions, and we see that Mr. Quixote and Mr. Panis have been abducted by the shrewd builder. He wants them to sign a contract that would effectively mean they agree to sell their homes and move to Carrasco land. As expected, both the men, who are now aware of Carrasco's true nature, refuse to do so. The builder then shows them his newest invention, a machine that can create artificial storm clouds. It now becomes evident that Carrasco was behind all the storms that have been ravaging La Mancha for the past few years. He did this so that he could buy their property at cheap prices and then sell them expensive apartments. As if that wasn't enough, Carrasco reveals that he created this machine by stealing the technology from Mr. Panis's laboratory. The evil builder then throws them in jail and begins to execute the next step of his plan. In the meantime, the kids have reached near the outer boundaries of the Carrasco construction sites. They see that the trees there have been all deforested, and the whole area looks like some part of hell. They also see a huge machine there, producing artificial storm clouds. The kids now realize that it was Carrasco who has been wreaking havoc on their beloved town for the past few years. Back inside the office, Mr. Quixote and Mr. Panis manage to put their differences aside and work together. They beat the guard guarding the gates and then steal their clothes. While Mr. Panis heads to the machines to disable the whole thing, Mr. Quixote sneaks outside to find and save their kids. Unfortunately, Carrasco and his henchmen capture Mr. Quixote on the roof of their machine. The builder realizes that the kids are watching and decides to play a twisted game. He hugs Mr. Quixote, which to the kids looks like they are friends. While Alfonso is sure that his father cannot be friends with such an evil man, Pancho begins to doubt it. He confronts Alfonso for this betrayal and decides he will head back to La Mancha alone. Victoria comforts Alfonso and promises she will convince their friend to come back as soon as possible. That night, Alfonso is all alone in a cave with no one but his imaginary bunnies. He is moved to tears as he realizes that his only friend now thinks that he is a son of a traitor. On the other hand, Victoria is trying her best to convince Pancho to come back and give their friend a chance to explain himself. They are having an intense conversation when suddenly, they find a chicken with a letter tied to its leg. This is the same chicken that Alfonso had sent for his home. They quickly capture the bird and read the contents of the letter tied to its leg. As Victoria reads it out loud, they realize how much Alfonso loves the both of them. The poor boy has poured his heart into the letter and describes Pancho and Victoria as his best friends. This revelation not only moves the two to tears, but also changes Pancho's mind. They are all determined to go back and help their friend who is in dire need of it. But, before they can do so, Pancho is picked up by a giant spider-like machine that belongs to Carrasco. Fortunately, Victoria manages to dodge the attacks and rush towards the cave where Alfonso is waiting all alone. He is still extremely emotional and doesn't want to listen to what Victoria has to say. But, when she reveals that Pancho is in trouble, he immediately springs into action and the duo head to Carrasco Constructions to save their friend. Unbeknownst to the kids, The shrewd builder is waiting for them. He makes artificial storms from his machine which immediately surround Victoria and Alfonso's frying ship. However, the duo somehow manage to make it to the crane where Pancho is being held. Alfonso jumps onto the crane and using a hydraulic device manages to free Pancho. The two boys then embrace each other and decide to work together. Following this, the three kids use their ship to clear the storm clouds, which infuriates Carrasco. In his anger, he doesn't realize that Mr. Quixote and Mr. Panas sneak out from captivity. The latter even manages to disable the whole machine that makes the storm. With his machine now down, Carrasco attacks La Mancha with his giant spider-shaped machines. However, Victoria, Pancho, and Alfonso have already warned the townsfolk about his treachery. The entire town then uses the abandoned windmills to create powerful countercurrent. This is so powerful that it blows off Carrasco's spider machine down the cliff. In the aftermath of this event, the people of La Mancha decide to move back into their quaint town. News reports that Carrasco has been arrested and is awaiting his trail for artificially affecting the local weather. Meanwhile, our hero, Alfonso Quixote, has found two new friends. The good thing is, this time these friends aren't imaginary,